I'm Becky McCoy, and you're listening to Stories of Unfolding Grace, the podcast about grace during unexpected times. You'll hear from real people dealing with hard stuff, and I hope you'll feel encouraged that you can bravely live through hard stuff too. In this episode, I'm talking with my friend Anna about a time when a family friend violated her family's trust and how it impacted her relationship with her sisters. I apologize for the few technical difficulties and how bad my voice sounds when I have a head cold. Why don't you tell people how we met?
We met while we were both in we're at Nellis Air Force Base, and we happened to go to the same church. And we met, during the serving weekend that our church did. And then we ended up being in the same small group.
Yeah, and we actually lived in the same apartment complex too, so it was kind of weird. So, yeah. So, if you guys... I'm getting over a cold, so my voice sounds a little funny at the moment. And Anna has got an adorable little baby boy on her lap. So her ambient noise is cuteness, and my ambient noise is not cute. So Anna's here with me today to talk about her story, something that happened in her life, and a struggle that she went through, a hard time, and how she got through it and how she saw grace show up in the midst of it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what kind of the subject of your story is?
So it happened I would say it happened to our family, directly to my three younger sisters, but our family as a whole. We had a close family friend that violated our trust pretty significantly, and it ended up resulting in a year-long court case in which she and the person that was involved was convicted guilty. And then I think she was convicted for like 15 years in jail, and then the other person for life. And so it was pretty significant. Mm-hmm. Into too many details. But during that time, it was hard. I tried to trust God, but it was also hard at the same time.
Right. And how old were you, and how old were your sisters?
My sisters were 7, 9, and 11, and I was 16 at the time.
So you were all still at home.
All of them.
Yeah. Okay. So how did you respond emotionally? Like, what was your reaction? Leo is currently pulling her hair. How did you respond emotionally? What was your reaction?
I immediately called her up when we found out what had happened, and I told her I'd come kill her. Probably not the best reaction to have when you're 16 and ended up going to court, but thankfully that didn't come up in the court case.
Yeah.
That same day I ran to my pastor that was currently pastoring me. I ran to his house and we prayed together and talked about it. But I just felt angry.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Felt angry for a very, very long time. And it didn't go away, I would say, until 5 years ago.
Yep. Yeah, because the situation affected your sisters more than it did you, like, do you feel like it changed your relationship with them at all?
Absolutely. The oldest sister was 11 years old, and I was 16 at the time. So there's 5.5 years between us. So there's always been significant difference between us growing up because, when you're in high school and the rest of them are in elementary school, there's only so much that you can relate to.
Yep.
But up until that point, I was always just the older sister that took care of them. And so after that point, it became obvious that they didn't feel like they were taken care of. And so they clung to each other because the three of them went to counseling together without the rest of the family. I never went through any professional counseling. Neither did my parents. My parents put the three of them in counseling. And so the bridge between us, not just age-wise, but emotionally, got even larger at the time. It wasn't until, I want to say, my next sister turned 15, 16, probably closer to 17, that we really started talking openly and honestly, because we were more on the same level.
Right.
But during the time, it was hard to know how to respond to them.
Yeah, definitely. And there's something about being the oldest sibling that you want to, like, do anything you can to make them never be upset.
Well, I mean, and I think hand in hand, what went a lot with that anger was also guilt, because I was supposed to go with them during the time. That was
and like be where they were,
where they were, and so if anything happened, obviously I could drive away and it wouldn't be a big deal. But I decided to make plans with friends and go hang out with friends rather than go with the original plans. And my parents were fine, so...
Right, because you didn't know, like, what was going on. You just thought, I'd rather hang out with my friends than my little sisters.
It's pretty much how it was.
Right. Yeah. So you said you struggled with being really angry and you struggled with a lot of guilt. Is there anything else that you really struggled with during from the time that it happened over, you said it took about 5 years. So when it was a really hard thing to deal with, was there anything else?
Not really. I think I probably still harbor a little bit of guilt, even though I know that it was completely out of my hands. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that'll really ever go away, especially as the older sibling.
Right.
But overall, I think those two emotions were easily the hardest to deal with. I mean, obviously I was sad for my sisters that it had happened to them. I was sad that my parents had to not witness it, but be a part of seeing their children go through court and the anger and whatnot with that, but also go through struggles of everyday emotions.
Yeah. Yeah. So before you kind of came to grips with it, how did you handle it? Did you, were you able to talk about it, or did you just kind of avoid it, or?
I kind of avoided it. I didn't really start talking about it until I met my husband a few years later. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really know anybody that could relate or that really listened enough without giving me their opinions. So I just kind of kept it bottled up.
Right. Would people like heap on more guilt, or like?
It was because people didn't know how to respond. Right. Most of the I knew had never gone through anything like that, so they didn't know the correct emotions, whether they should be listening more and not responding, or whether they should give me advice. And so I had people tell me, well, it didn't happen to me directly, so you should just get over it. Or the person I was dating at the time just kind of gave me a blank stare and just said, okay, well, let me know when the court case is over. And that was about it.
Yeah. So no support.
Not at all. And even the pastor that I ran to, I mean, he prayed with me and whatnot, but he didn't lead me in a direction to get help either. And so that was hard too. And I ended up leaving that church, not because I didn't like their programs, but because I just didn't feel like I connected with anybody as much anymore. Mm-hmm.
Choosing to live bravely and authentically is important to me, and I'm guessing it's something you are interested in too. You can learn more about my story at my blog, beckylmccoy.com. Stop by and sign up to receive my monthly newsletter. It includes all sorts of interesting tidbits and family updates. Check the show notes for details. Hey, I'd love your help with something. If you're enjoying Stories of Unfolding Grace, please share it with your friends and subscribe in iTunes. If you leave a rating, it'll help other listeners to find the podcast. Thanks so much for being on this journey with me. So now that you look back, what ways can you see that there was grace? That God gave you good things in the midst of this really difficult, challenging season?
Well, most people don't know. I met my husband on a plane, and I definitely think that God put him in my life when he did to help me walk through the feelings and emotions that I had. One of the things that I really appreciated about him was when I finally told him what had happened, he validated my feelings. It was okay for me to feel angry. It was okay for me to feel guilt. It was okay for me to feel all the emotions that I was feeling, despite it being completely out of my hands. He encouraged me to have a relationship with God more as a friend rather than as a God, as a leader. And that helped a lot because I started talking to God and more of as a daily friend. Like I talk to, answer the phone or whatever. And God putting my husband in my life to help me lead through that, to help me deal with those emotions is definitely how he has shown me grace. But he's also shown me grace in the ability to connect with my sisters as adults now. Yeah. And I never thought I'd be able to do that because the three of them clung to each other so much that it only recently kind of manifested itself that they have started reaching out to me on an adult level. And I mean, it took them growing up and kind of being seniors and getting out of high school and whatnot to really get to that same level. But they are able to talk to me about it. And not only one of the biggest issues that I struggled with was telling them that I feel angry and guilty when it didn't really happen to me.
Right. You experienced it differently, but you still had those emotions.
Absolutely. And they've been able to validate my own feelings with it, despite it not directly happening to me, which has been a huge godsend because I don't want to take away from their situation, their story.
Right.
I don't want the limelight to be on me when it actually happened to them. But as a whole, it happened to all of us in our family in different ways.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned something about the other day, we were talking about this. You mentioned something about how with one of your sisters in particular, you've been able to have a closer relationship than you imagined you could because of this new, openness.
Yeah. The 11-year-old, when it happened, is now married and has a relationship with her husband. So her and I were close for a good while. And now that she has a relationship, she's kind of walking through her own new marriage and stuff. But my middle sister, the next one down, who was a 9 at the time, when it happened to her, she got very angry. And she kind of closed off everybody to a point to where it was hard to talk to her without you getting hurt by her words, and not just what was coming out of her mouth, but how it was coming out of her mouth. It pushed me away a lot. And I know that she realizes that now, but I never imagined that I'd be able to have a relationship with her specifically because of how she felt, the emotions, and how
Leo wants to talk too.
Response was, which is huge that we do have a relationship now, and not only have a relationship now, but she values my opinion so much so that I'm one of the first people that she goes to, which is great in, life nowadays.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just to see the healing and that's happened in your relationship. Okay, so I want to ask you 2 questions about this experience. The first is how have you chosen to live bravely and authentically as a result of experiencing this?
I think bravely and authentically that I'm not afraid of feeling emotions nearly as much as I was. I understand now that there's a time and a place for all emotions, depending on whatever happens or situation and whatnot. So that's been awesome. And it's okay if I say to somebody that I'm sad or I'm angry or I'm just having a really hard time. I don't have to constantly say, I'm good. And I have learned that it kind of makes or breaks friends when you do live authentically like that, because a lot of people aren't ready for your emotions.
Right.
And I'm okay with that. Maybe that person will come to me at a different time. But I have learned that through my not spit up, through my ability to be so transparent with emotions, eventually the people that I didn't think I'd be friends with or in have a have a difference in their own lives do come back to me.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it is. It especially recently. We had a good friend here in the Valley who her husband works with somebody, and that lady's husband killed himself. And my friend just texted me and said, "Hey, can I come over? I need advice. I know that your good friend lost her husband, so this is a completely different situation, but how do I deal with her emotions?" And I said, "That you don't. You just be there. Toilet, you go get groceries, you watch her kid when she can't handle it. That's what you do." And she's like, "So buying her a book on being a widow is not going to be a good time." I'm like, "No, especially not right now."
Right. Yeah. Somebody who's just lost their husband is not really looking to sit down and read a book.
Especially because the lady that lost her husband to suicide is not a believer. And so that's also really hard because my friend is. And so she's like, "Well, I want to introduce her to God." And I said, "This is not the time."
Right. Yeah. She just has a lot of needs that need to be met. And that's way more important right now.
Absolutely. And that's exactly that. Maybe eventually she will remember that you were there, just like Jesus was there with other people. But you don't need to introduce her to that right now.
Right. Okay, so my last question is if someone who's experienced a huge breach of trust were to talk to you about what you experienced, how would you try to encourage them to handle the situation maybe better than you did, similarly than you did? What advice would you give them?
It's okay to feel angry. It's okay to feel violated. It's okay to feel anything, really. That's probably what I would say first. And second, I would say that before they can work through really with whoever violated her, whatnot, they need to work through their own emotions, because sometimes if you don't work through your own emotions, you often go to things that are not healthy. I know that was an issue I had after it happened to me, and so I would encourage that person to definitely work through emotions, to find someone that is there to listen to everything without pushing their own agenda on that person. I know if I had somebody there to just yell at when I needed to yell at, I probably would have been able to work through things a little bit faster. but I didn't feel I could. And
right.
so
Find a safe person. Well, thank you so much for sharing about your story. I know there will be people that can identify with that. And before we say goodbye, my favorite part of each interview is to ask you these next 4 questions. So here you go. First question is, what are you loving right now? What is making you really excited? And I know you like to get obsessive about things. So what are you obsessing over?
What am I obsessing over right now? I am obsessing over good chocolate.
Ooh, that's a great answer. Good chocolate. All right. And because I'm a foodie and I know you like food too, what's your favorite meal right now?
Oh, that one's hard. Oh, that's hard.
I know, but maybe you'll inspire a new menu for me next week. Help me change it up.
My favorite food item right now is something I shouldn't be eating. I am loving margarita pizza.
Ooh, yum. Yes.
And I like to switch it up between red sauce and pesto.
Yes, love it. This is why we're friends. Okay, last 2 questions are a little bit deeper. The first one is, what are you doing to take care of yourself?
I recently shut off my Facebook, and I told my husband that I was shutting off the noise for a while. It's been really, really good for me. I've been able to focus on getting healthy again. So I have started to go to yoga classes again, because it's been a long journey to try and get back into shape. And I downloaded Jefferson Bethke's, I think it's 13 or 14 day, I don't remember what it's at. What is it called? Morning devotion. And it's literally one verse and a little snippet of his opinion, and then just prayer. And it's been really good for me to just read that one verse to try and really get back into reading longer things in the Bible, because that's my biggest issue.
Yeah, it's so hard with little ones too, to have any time. All right, and the last question is, what are you doing to be brave? What brave thing are you doing right now?
Surviving 2 kids. Applies for medical school soon.
Yeah, hey, that's brave. I've been through the med school thing. Having a husband who works full time and going to school that's a brave thing. So, all right, well, great. Thank you so much for your favorite things lately, and especially for your story and just being so vulnerable to share with strangers about hard things.
Of course.
In the next episode of Stories of Unfolding Grace, you'll hear from Mary Kate White.
We figured, why not? Everyone else seems to be doing it. We both had very good reputations. I guess you can call me the goody two-shoes at my high school. Just everyone was shocked when they found out that Andrew and I were pregnant. I immediately went to just a place of, why me? I'm a good girl. And, why, of all the people that have sex before they get married, why did this happen to us?
If you're interested in sharing your story of unfolding grace, head to my blog, BeckyLMcCoy.com, and click on the submissions button. I can't wait to hear from you. Thanks again for joining me. I'm really looking forward to next week.